was going to go in a little sooner, but I had to clear up my throat, and I don't think that would be a wonderful noise. Amber's just going to stare at you guys. Thanks, Amber.
I'm always waiting for you to do your usual spiel.
I had something caught in my throat, and I need you to save me. It's the Marriott Lab. It's been a while since we've done this show.
Yep.
But we need to do the show because, one, we had no Meta Lab this week because Turkey Day in Canada. And the other thing is that WizKids decided to bless us with a brand new piece of news on Tuesday. They've really got to get on my news cycle.
Mondays, guys. Mondays.
Like Monday morning, give me stuff. I will be ready for it. Believe me.
I believe the States had a somewhat holiday as well.
Columbus Day?
Yeah.
I think it's like one of those maybe holidays, not all the time holiday. Doesn't matter. Not important. So what are we here to talk about? We're here to talk about that brand new piece of news.
Yes.
What is the piece of news, Amber?
It's my yawn. Yeah.
See? So I'm going to leave you stranded like you left me stranded earlier.
That brand new piece of news is a watch list.
Watch list!
It has actually been quite some time since we've had our last watch list. When was the how we have a watch list since like Faust got pre-banned?
Last one we had included Nick Fury, if I remember correctly. So Nick Fury was the last thing I remember that wasn't changed on the watch list. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's been a while. Been a while.
We haven't which is actually really nice, which means that the design in the game has actually been going fairly smoothly in the fact that they haven't had to go back and change things that they have made.
It also shows a fair bit of confidence in the player base. Nothing has been absolutely toxic, but I do believe the things in the watch list do need a little bit of love. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the watch list thing. We're going to talk about why each thing is on. So I'm going to read WizKid's thing. I'm going to put it up on screen. We're going to talk about why each figure's on the watch list. And then my favorite part of this game, predict or create our own suggestions. Because the world is a big suggestion box. And look, it's Emily, the reason for one of these.
But you did.
This is your fault, Emily. This is why we're here. All right. But that gives us content, so we're good. All right. So without further ado. So it's a Q4 2019 watch list. Dear HeroClix, players, HeroClix watch list is a process. They have to explain what the watch list is because it's been not only that, but it's been so long they kind of needed to do this. It's a process by which we identify figures and or other game elements that we feel may have a negative impact on the game of HeroClix. Being on the watch list in and of itself is not an errata or change to these figures' game elements, but rather an indication that these figures' game elements are under review and scrutiny, and action may be taken on the figure/game element if we feel that it would be the best interest of a healthy HeroClix gameplay environment. So that's a whole bunch of fluff to tell you that not necessarily is everything going to be changed, but we're taking a look at these figures and seeing what might necessarily need to be changed in order to get through this. If we determine after review that we see little to no negative impact or gameplay from the figure in question, to banning the figure game element if we determine that after review there's no viable fix that would reduce or eliminate the negative game effect of the figure/game element in question. I'm going to say that I think all of them get a minor at minimum change this time around as my prediction, because sometimes there's always one figure that's like, no, you can't change that. There's no way you need to change it. It's not as bad as you think. This time I don't think that's there.
Yeah.
All right. But that said, below is a list of the figures, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, they do this quarterly. It's all a lot of fluff. I don't know why I'm reading it out loud. So here's the list. So from Avengers Black Panther, we have figure number 49, the Gardener, and figure number 50, Trader. And then figure number 19B from Earth X, the Vulture. And from X-Men animated Dark Phoenix Saga, we have figure number 4, the giant figure 14, Proteus. This is what we lovingly call green Proteus. There's the orange Proteus and there's a green Proteus. This is the green Proteus. After a period of review, an article will be posted explaining the errata or clarifications, if any, to be made in the listed figures/game elements. Watch list thread on the WizKids rules forum houses all errata to figures. So we're going to be able to find this in the errata PDF, which they've lovingly linked right here. Okay, so that said, let's take a look at some of these figures here on HC Realms. I've had them all pulled up except for one. They still haven't updated this price. So let's talk about the Vulture. So the Vulture has got a trait, time to make my getaway. When Vulture KOs a character after resolutions, he can use charge at no cost. In addition to which he ignores characters for movement. And then he's got special movement power in his first 2 clicks, charge and sidestep. When Vulture uses sidestep, you may roll a d6. On a 4 to 6, he can use sidestep a second time. So it's really this trait that we're looking at right now. And it's when Vulture KOs a character after resolutions, he can use charge at no cost. Now this is problematic as... this on its own isn't so problematic. The character, the stats, the set that we have here is not that bad. But we are HeroClix players in the competitive world, and we don't come with the powers and stats that you see on this dial. We do silly things. Like Miss Emily here in the chat, we see you there, decided that giving the Vulture Doc Ock's arms would be absolutely demolishing. And that is true. So when you give this character +3 to its attack, +3 to its damage, and then give it Flurry, things start to get a little out of hand. One of the things that gets specifically out of hand is if you happen to KO 2 characters, both character kind of what we like to call bank an extra activation of charge. So both actions kind of have to resolve, as it were. So if I kill, let's say, 2 characters in a single flurry with 2 6 damage attacks, which is very, very possible to happen, what'll happen is I've now triggered my trait twice, and then I can charge and then charge again, regardless of having not KO'd another character. And because I ignore characters, I don't have to roll breakaways. It's pretty simple and disgusting in how it goes. And if you lose to this team, it feels bad.
At least it's over quickly.
It's over quick, but it's a really bad feeling. And I'll talk more about the overarching thing and goal of this. But next up, we're going to talk about the Gardener. Now, the Gardener's 45 points. Initially, a 4-click dial, possibly an extra click if your opponent has a special or equipment or ID cards or paid for a map bonus, and he'll have this extra click on top of that. He's got so that comes from the Sense of Greater Challenge. He can also be pre-equipped with the Time Gem, which gives him probability control. Watch My Garden Grow is a trait. At the beginning of your turn, you may generate a hindering terrain marker in a square within range. Note, line of fire is not a requirement of this. This is a big sticking point on this, but there's other parts that are insane. My plants have a calming effect, or the opposite if I desire. Smoke Cloud. Free. Make a close attack targeting an opposing character occupying a hindering terrain marker generated by Gardener, regardless of adjacency. If you hit, choose that a hit character either can use or can't use Battle Fury until your next turn. Now, the big thing on this one is, for one, you can find ways to give the Gardener Smoke Cloud for free, which is the Nightbringer Ring. So as a result, you would take a free action, place smoke terrain on you, free action, make a close attack on you. You see where this gets a little bit nutso. In addition to which, like I said, line of fire is not a major course on this one. In fact, I don't even think range is a requirement for him to make a close attack from a hindering terrain marker he made.
Yeah, it's just placing the initial free one that needs to be within range. The close attack is it doesn't matter where you are on the board.
Right. Okay. So put all that together. Next, we have Trader. Gardener on its own doesn't seem super unassuming, but I'm going to have more description as to what I think the problems are in this case when I describe what I think could be or will be the change in this case, or come up with my change suggestion, because you can't talk about, I feel in this particular case, you can't talk about the problems until you kind of also discussing the solution. The Trader is unassuming character. Again, has a click 0 possible, but it's a special attack power, which he literally only has on his first click or his possible first 2 clicks, depending on the game state as whether or not he got his click 0. Let's make a trade. Free. Choose an equipped character, friendly or opposing, within 3 squares in line of fire. If trader is equipped and both equipments have equip any, those equipments are now equipped to the other character. So he trades them, as it were. This has created a problem for one-man army teams. You cannot play a 300-point character right now because this character, when used in conjunction with Kobik or any other character for that matter, using the blue cosmic cube, you will use that character to take a free action to incapacitate your opponent. Then you're going to put your trader up next to or within 3 squares of that character and adjacent to this opposing character who's 300 points. It's just your one-man army. That's literally it. So trader is now next to within 3 squares of Kobik, but next to the opposing character. Trades a cosmic cube, then triggers a cosmic cube. You've now got 2 action tokens. Your turn comes, it's time for you to clear, and then I wash, rinse, repeat. You've got 2 action tokens per turn. Eventually, I'm just going to come up and punch you in the face a bunch of times. How does that sound for playing a 300-point character, Amber?
Sounds like so much fun.
Excitement, right? And I think one of the big parts of that is they want to take a legitimate strategy in the game of HeroClix that has existed since day one. A 300-point one-man army is a viable strategy in the game of HeroClix if that's how you want to play the game. You shouldn't be forced to not be allowed to do this just because this one strategy exists, right? So I think that's the reasoning on the decision on that. You think there's anything beyond that, or?
Oh, no. It's definitely that and strategies like that. Like the
Zero Ring, I think is another
one.
It
comes down to the Felix Faust problem where they're trying to, and Vulture is like this too. They're always looking at situations where a player is sitting down at the table and not playing the game.
Which brings us to our next problem. What we like to call the Proteus problem. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have the HC Realms link, so here it is. Now, you can look at this entire dial. Ultimately, people are going to be using this at 10 points, and they're not just going to be using 1. And it's because of this Garden of Proteus trait. Whenever a character within range is given a costed action, does that note that's not just friendly or that's any character within range. His range is 5, not huge, but let's get there. Is given a costed action. After resolutions, you may generate a blocking, hindering, obscuring, or water terrain marker within 3 squares of that character, but not in their square. At the beginning of your turn, remove all hindering terrain markers generated by Proteus. So, let's take one Proteus as an example. And I have a 10-point Proteus, and let's say, for any argument's sake, we're going to say Starro. Let's say I use Starro first as an example, and I create a bunch of Starro fights. Now, Starro fights take costed actions, but they don't count towards your action total. And as a result, I can make, let's say with 3 Starro fights, 3 pieces of blocking terrain with a single Proteus within 3 squares of those Starro fights. And I've taken no actions that count towards my action total, except for making those Starro fights maybe with Starro. I don't even know if that's how Starro works. I'm just making things up. Bear with me. Now, I want you to take that same thing, that same Starro, and I want you to add 5 Proteuses to the situation. So now, for 50 points, I am creating 5 markers for every 1 action I am taking with a Starro fight, which is not counting towards my action total, and creating 5 pieces of blocking terrain at a time. In 3 of them, I've made 15 blocking terrain markers. And I want you to put 15 blocking terrain markers on the map and tell me that's fun to see across the table. So ultimately, the big problem is Proteus isn't. It's kind of an obvious problem, and I think this is where we're going to start with our predictions. So, Amber, what do you think they got to do with Proteus?
Well, either it needs to be a once per all characters with this trait, or a once per turn generation.
So, like, even if you have multiples, all of them make only 1 at best?
Yeah.
Okay. That's reasonable. Both of those are very reasonable. I think ultimately the what they're going to go with is once for all characters with this trait.
Yeah.
Just because that seems like the most reasonable and easy fix. So if you're hoarding Proteus, I'd advise to maybe change your mind on that and start trading them, getting rid of them, maybe go down a few. I mean, because this is what people have been hoarding them for. And there's probably a spiking green Proteus price right now. That should probably tank them right out if you're still looking to get one soon. Now, even at one at a time, I want to point out, remember I was describing 3 pieces of blocking terrain. Mm-hmm. This is another thing we want to do, is when we come up with our changes, we don't want to break the character and make them unusable. No. We just want to make them still good. And in the case of taking 3 actions that didn't count towards my action total and making 3 pieces of blocking terrain Proteus, so long as I put those starfights in a reasonable place, I say that's a pretty reasonable back and forth. It's like, okay, I just made 3 free pieces of blocking terrain. That's still like 3/4 of a free barrier.
I was just going to say, it's basically a free barrier.
Right? So there are still strategies you'll be able to use with Proteus. You just won't be able to necessarily use the big, stupid, broken wall of hell. And I think that's as Amber suggested, a once for all characters with this, or once per turn with all of them even. Like, if you have 5 of them and you make 1 set of blocking terrain for 1 action in each, or one piece of blocking terrain for 5 of them, that 50 points. You've just, on 1 action, just made a barrier. So, still not bad, right? But a little bit high at a 50-point investment. So, I think either one is a reasonable solution. I just think once for every action for each character with this trait would probably be the best way to resolve this kind of situation. Because then, even with multiples, you just have it for a longer period of time because they got to kill multiple Proteans. Proteus?
Yeah.
Protean.
Protei.
All right, so next, we're working backwards now. We go to Traitor. Now, Traitor's a little bit more of a complex thing because he's already got a somewhat complex power. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to one of our fans in a chat earlier today. Actually, we started talking about wrestling. Then he showed me the link to this. I was like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about that. It kind of showed up on my radar too. It was like, so like most of them seem obvious, but what do you do with Traitor? And it is a tricky one because what you want to do is you want to maintain the flavor of Traitor while at the same time kind of taking away the full-blown lockdown that comes with the Unimi, or that comes with, you playing a one-man army, especially with the specific combination that's coming power. In addition to which, you got to understand is another thing that Traitor's been using. I briefly mentioned it. The Zero Ring is another thing that Traitor can use, especially when used in multiples. Where, let's say, in the case of Devin's team, if I remember correctly, he had an Unseen would give it the Zero Ring, and then he had 2 Traitors. Or even a Gardener might have had the Zero Ring. At one point, a character had the Zero Ring. And he had 2 Traitors. And what would happen is he'd make a free barrier token, 1 single free barrier with the first person with it. Then trade the object with Traitor. Now, because of the way barrier works, when you lose barrier, the barrier stays up. The Traitor now takes this and makes another free barrier. And then another Traitor trades with him and gets another free barrier. So it's ultimately, I want to point out that the big problem with the Traitor is the fact that immediately upon trading the object, he can use it. So I came up with probably the best way to kind of narrow down what the Traitor can do, and kind of knock down what he can do with this potential is when he trades. I think we should add a clause that both objects until the end of this turn, the current active turn, whatever it is, the turn that Traitor trades it, both objects lose their effect ability. And I think that's probably the best way to do it, because what'll happen now is Kobik in the case of the Kobik use, Kobik uses the object, or uses the Cosmic Cube, gives an action token, in our case, the Unimind, who's a single figure army. Then we trade the object with Traitor, and whatever object I traded to Kobik, both of them lose their effect portion of their text. What ultimately means, so basically it says, so the way you would reword it, I'm like, it's explaining it makes it more complicated. Free, choose an equipped character friendly or opposing within 3/4 of the line of fire. If Traitor is equipped and both equipments have equip any, those equipments are now equipped to the other character, and both equipments lose their effect abilities, or their effect, which is what it is that defines what the equipment does. And it's just until the end of turn. So then what happens is Traitor trades with Kobik, but now can't activate the Traitor, the Cosmic Cube ability. And then we go into the next turn, and then they both kind of get it back. So if there's a defensive portion to it, I don't lose out on that. Or if there's like a probability control or something like that. But it's that kind of that idea, kind of keeps in the flavor where Trader gives this to you, you give his thing, give him your thing. He's like, huh, I wonder what this does, and hasn't figured it out until your turn. So he's not going to immediately kind of know. That's a collector thing. The collector should immediately know what the heck's going on with it because he collects. The trader's like, oh, that's cute and shiny. Can I have that? Here, I'll give you mine. And so as a result, you would kind of nerf down the power, while at the same time, Trader becomes less of a combo on your own team, while at the same, okay, I can trade and get probability control for this character and eventually use it later on. That's what I'm going to need in the future. But instead, it becomes more offensively focused. I'm like, I'm taking your equipment, or he's swapping equipment when he needs it. But I think the ability to use the equipment right away is the big flaw in Trader, and I think that we need to curb it somehow. And I think losing the effect ability on the equipment on the turn you trade it is the best way to kind of overall kind of take him down a notch while at the same time keeping the flavor and power of the character. I don't know. Amber, I went on. What do you think?
I'm thinking on what you're saying there, and I'm just trying to figure out if, like, there's obviously no kind of precedence for what it is that you're suggesting.
Nope. Nothing has said... Well, has any equipment said that equipment loses its effect?
No.
Or loses its abilities or something like that?
No.
I feel like there is something.
It's usually... Well, I think it's more of sticking to game language, where it would be you cannot use...
The effect.
Yeah. Like, again, like, I'm just being a stickler for that because for this sort of thing, you do have to kind of be in that mindset of game language and trying to reword things.
I mean, can't use the effect. I mean, you don't worry about the game language. We're creating new game language specifically for this character.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that there's, again, I'm looking at this, I'm absorbing what you're saying because I'm getting this information live, same with everybody else.
Yeah, we didn't plan this.
So I'm just understanding what it is you're saying and relating that to, again, I said there's no precedence for this. There's no real precedence in the fact of a Watchlist errata creating new game language. That being said, I feel like just looking at how characters have been errated in the past, what the problem is with Trader, I feel like the quick...
So after resolutions, both character can't use
the
equipment, because that's Sheriff Strange is your precedence.
There you go. See, I knew, like, okay, so after
resolutions, equipped characters can't use those equipment.
Yeah. And I feel like that could work, definitely. I also feel like the quick and dirty errata that we're more likely to see out of this is seeing this effect no longer being a free action and it being a power action.
It's still just as powerful as a power action.
But then you can't act... Where I was going with that is that whatever he's equipped with, he can't activate with a power action. Like, if he has that action token, he's already taken a power action for the turn. Like, basically it nullifies Trader from doing anything unless whatever he is equipping himself with gives him a free action.
Guess what all this equipment that's become problematic gives them?
They're all free actions.
They're all free actions.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from. It's like, making a power action, that should be enough. But I feel like that's still not quite there. Because he's also power cosmic, so he's already built in willpower. And somebody with leadership nearby is just going to go pop. Yeah. And we got ways of removing action tokens and making this happen. So
now the one that we actually had kind of talked in earlier, my suggestion on this was just making it so that you can't continue to trade with the same character.
So that character can't be traded with this game?
Yeah, I don't like however we can word it. Once per character, you can
once
trade
per game
this.
Per character?
Yeah. However it works with, again, game language. But just so that you can't sit there and have Trader and Kobik go back and forth. Be like, you can do it once, and that is it. You're a one-trick pony now on this.
Yeah, I feel like that nerfs him into oblivion. And that's what I always want to avoid with these things.
Absolutely, but we've seen that happen in the past with Watchlist, where I'm saying, like, this is what... It's not what we want from the character. We do want these to keep getting, but, again, how do you go forward in changing these characters without accidentally completely nullifying them?
Yeah, and in my case, he kind of maintains a level of competitiveness, just in a different. You change his focus. I think mine is probably the least my direction and where I want to go with it. I feel is less damaging to the character.
Yes. So. I also just didn't want to go in this. Well, everything Jason said was right, and I have no opinion now.
Well, you're allowed to do that because I'm going to give you first seas on the Canadian Goose. How do you feel, Amber, that we should change the Canadian Goose? What do you think they could do to make this just not as bad as it is?
Well, there's a couple different ways.
Give us one so that I have something to work with. Because I only gave one for my trader. It just took a lot of words to explain it.
Fair. It's a coin flip as to which, because there's two good changes.
There's two really good.
There's two good changes that easily fix what is the problem with this, and it's a matter of which one do you want to say.
What do you think is the safest?
What I think the safest way to go forward with it is that he can only do his banked charge once per turn.
So basically, time to make my getaway should be worded once per turn when Vulture KOs a character after resolutions he can use charge at no cost.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. That's pretty cool. And I also think that's the least damaging as far as the integrity of the game. Because the other obvious solution, this character can't be equipped. That means that maintains his power level, but that takes away the flurry. So you have to find another way to give him flurry. People will find another way to give him flurry.
Oh, absolutely.
They'll find some other way to give him free attacks. We'll find a way. And I think limiting that, as you said, to just once per turn, when Vulture KOs a character after resolutions, he can use charge at no cost, is a reasonable way. Because at 50 points, that's still flippin' powerful, man.
Oh, yeah. And if... at that point, he's still allowed to be equipped and have flurry. That is the potential of killing, like, clearing out, say, anywhere from 1 to 4 characters, depending on what it is you're clearing out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so next one, I think this one is the one that was the most complicated, least complicated to a certain degree, but probably requires, on level of trader, the amount of explanation. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I want to point out is Gardner's point cost. He's 45 points. Yeah. A 45-point character should not, in a single turn, be allowed to attack twice. If you can figure out a way to attack twice with him. And do what he can at the rate that he can. Like, you can draw a comparison. I was imagining this in my head. You can draw the comparison with Medusa, but Medusa has a number of strict limits, one of which is she has to be adjacent to the hair for the hair to exist. The hair doesn't exist if she's not adjacent. But then that's how you get both attacks out of her. In addition to which, it's still within, like, she's got a range of 2, but the other thing still has to be adjacent to her for all of her things to work. There's so much on this. The problem with Gardner is, and I've noticed this when Devin was practicing Gardner with me, in a single turn, he was capable of, with Gardner, being carried, then using a free action with Nightbringer to Smoke Cloud for free, and then make an attack through the Smoke Cloud made from Nightbringer for free as well. And that was all, like, in a single action after being carried on a 45-point character before you add the equipment. Some people add the equipment, a lot of people don't. The Nightbringer, as I explained, adds 5. It's still only a 50-point character that is attacking from, it doesn't matter how far away, and a close attack, doesn't matter how far away, regardless of line of fire, again, doesn't matter how far away. And I think that is a problematic power set. And I think the biggest and easiest change, unfortunately, will nerf him into oblivion, I think. But I think it's the only way you can go with a character with this efficiency, doing this much damage at this point cost, is you got to take away the free from my planets have a calming effect or the opposite if I desire ability, and instead of it being a free attack through his hindering terrain, It's just going to be he's allowed to make a close attack targeting a character occupying his hindering terrain without the additional free element. Now, what that means is the smoke cloud he comes with is basically worthless, and I think that's problematic. So, if you still want him on the power level, perhaps keep the free, but require some degree of line of fire to the hindering terrain that he's making, or range, or a limited range. Possibly within 4 squares, whatever. But I don't know. It's a little strong, the way he works, the way he's worded, and what you're capable of doing in the current game state. It's this one. This one is the one that you could feasibly get away without changing, but I still think some degree of change needs to happen to a 45-point character capable of doing this with a potential 11 attack, 3 damage, that doesn't come with some kind of a risk. Like as an example, there's lots of 45, 50-point characters with charge and flurry, but then they come with this, the potential risk of they got to be in close combat. How tough is the guy you're about to hit, right? Whereas Gardner is like, I don't even need to be near it. I don't even need to see him. I could do this in a cave, and it doesn't really matter. So, I don't know. And I feel like he is on a level that might be a little bit too, like point to power ratio. And again, I don't want to make the smoke cloud worthless on him, but I do want to limit it. Perhaps another possibility. I'm overdoing it. Amber, stop me, please. Unless you actually have a suggestion.
No, keep going.
Okay. The last possible suggestion I can think of, was that if you take the free action attack, then you can't make another attack with Gardner. I think would be ideally the best way, because he's an old man with a cane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, an old man with a cane should not be this combat effective. I understand he's a cosmic being, but you costed him at 45 points, cost effectiveness, or cost him accordingly, power level him accordingly. I feel like he should not be able to act as much as you're able to make him act in a single turn in the current environment of the game. I feel like you got to find a way to make it so that he can't do as much as he does in a single turn. So this is the hardest one, I think, to possibly come up with a reasonable, feasible errata. And I do believe that the most hammering would be to make it so that his smoke cloud is really just another worthless use of smoke cloud in the game, while at the same time still allowing him to use any hindering he's made this turn to make a close attack, or made in general a close attack. Because the other thing is, those hindering terrain markers that he makes at the beginning of the turn are they stay. Like, they don't disappear at any point. Mm-hmm. So they stick around. So they do create an eventual jungle that your opponent's just going to go, I'm going to have to get in here at some point. And then it'll force your opponent. It'll play differently, but I just feel like there's too much power going into a character who is at this point, too much effectiveness at a character at this point level. At the same time, he's a rare, the complexity is high. Anything you wanted to add, Amber?
No, you're making a lot of really good points on that, and I was just looking up, remembering older characters, and obviously there is, I don't want to call it a power creep because it's kind of gone in the opposite direction, where characters cost less but do more now. Where a bunch of characters that have had similar things like this in the past are 100 points or more. He's 45 points again. I don't know, looking at it, like, I would like to say the Watch My Garden Grow be within line of fire as well as within range, because there's been a lot of maps that he can get around, because just being within 6 squares is a lot different than 6 squares in line of fire.
You ever seen the underground cavern? He could make some pretty nasty jungles in there.
Yeah. The other one I was thinking of, if we kept his attack as a free action, but if there was a way to generate, instead of it being a hindering terrain marker, that he creates a special terrain marker, and then he can only attack through the special terrain marker, so that you can't combo free smoke cloud on top of that, and then he's attacking through all the smoke cloud, as well as the hindering terrain markers that he's created.
Yeah, I kind of in there with that one. It's just that's hard enough to track as it is. I mean, people play two of these guys, so they have their own freaking. Because generated by Gardner generally means this character named Gardner, so you got to be very careful about who's using what. So I know a lot of guys already use special markers for them and differentiate between the two of them. But yeah, I think Gardner is one of the harder ones. Yeah. To say the least. Yeah. Probably also the most likely candidate to have nothing happen to him.
That's true. Because, well, it's also one of those things is that because he's very often seen in conjunction with Trader. So if Trader essentially gets fixed, that may in turn fix Gardner.
Yeah. So.
Whereas we saw that happen with Ghost Rider, where nothing ended up happening to Ghost Rider. Everything around him got changed so that he was no longer a problem.
Ghost Rider wasn't even on that watch list.
I don't think he was.
No. I know Spiral was.
Yeah. Well.
Spiral was one that wasn't legal yet, and they're like, oh no, this is going to be a problem if we don't let this, if we don't this in the mud now.
Yeah.
But that said, I feel like I was saying, Gardner's going to be a tough one to full blown like dropping a rata on. I feel like the other three were a little bit more obvious. You just needed to dial back some of the power level on it.
I think Vulture and Proteus are going to be the easiest of just a once per turn kind of thing. Like adding barely even a sentence into their power.
Yeah.
Trader's going to take a little more finessing in game language, and depending on how they want to go with it. Yeah. And then Gardner, it's a matter of really assessing what his damage is, what he can do, and what you can do to mitigate that. And he may just be one of those losses from this where the only errata they can make work ends up essentially making him a useless character again.
I mean, I think, as we said, it's one of those situations where everything beside it may be the problem, and if we actually nerf down Trader, like you mentioned, then he doesn't have to get worried, because Gardner being a not unique character, Trader being a not unique character, sometimes the problems with both those characters, the fact that using multiples in conjunction with each other does present some of these issues, right?
Yeah.
So, like, as an example where Devin would say, I got 2 Traders and I got a Gardner and I got the Nightbringer ring, or I got 1 Trader and 2 Gardeners. This turn, Trader's going to take the Nightbringer, trade it to this Trader, whatever, trade it to eventually get it on either one. At one point, all the Gardeners are going to be doing way too much in the course of a turn. And the turns, if you've ever watched either 1 Gardener and 2 Traders, or 2 Traders and 1 Trader and 2 Gardeners, like, you're in for a one hell of a bunch of free actions and one hell of a turn. And you, like, at one point, I think I was looking at, like, are you sure you haven't taken too many free actions on this one here, buddy?
Like, are you sure you haven't done that free action already? Yeah. I feel like you've done that free action
you've done
already.
This before.
It's like, oh no, that was the other 5 characters.
Yeah. And of course, the big fear with Gardner for me is the idea of attacking after carrying, where we just got out of the world of Samcap, and we're now like, this is a lighter version of Samcap, and we still have the Medusas to deal with that do that in the game right now. So,
of course, yes.
It's something to be aware of. How many times am I going to say that? I think Gardner is the hard one, and I don't envy them for having to do it.
I just don't want to see us get into a spot in the game, and this is like doomsday saying basically on this one. I don't want to see us get into a spot in the game again where the green power battery is a necessity. Like that
something on that level needs to exist or something like that.
Yeah, like that came out of a necessity of everything was a free action, and then once that was out, so many teams and so many players were using it because it just cut down on the, hey, no, you don't get to use those free actions.
I want to talk about slowing the pace of the game to a crawl.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the big things that WizKids needs to be a little bit more careful with is the use of attacks as free actions or at no cost. It's
Yeah.
such a dangerous design element that
Because it's one of those things we will exploit. Absolutely. If it's there, we will exploit it.
like even autonomous is sometimes is like, oh my god, that's a stupid powerful power.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we have now watched the watch list, given our suggestions. If you have any, of course, if you're in the chat, throw them out there. We might maybe just kind of read them out loud. If you have any questions for us, put in big capital letters, question. That will help us identify it in this super busy chat. Look at them all talk, Amber. They're just so loud in there.
Quiet down, guys.
Okay, keep it. Can we get it down to a dull roar in there? And I know we had a question in the Discord, so I will address it because this is kind of Metal Lab light. So kind of taking it to the rest of the game. There's another Kadima Hero Clicks, and one of our patrons wants to know over on our Patreon Discord if you want to join at patreon.com/HeroClicks. Question: based on what we've seen so far, what are the standout WWE singles? What are you looking forward to, Amber?
I know I really wanted to get Eddie Guerrero to work.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. And Andre the Giant.
You want the big apple lady?
Yeah.
Asuka. I'm looking forward to making Asuka work. And you know what? Some of the Fast Force characters have been amazing. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there's some really good stuff. I don't have it on me, but I remember something made me go, in the Mixed Match Challenge. And I know I'm loving Finn Balor in the ring, in the Mixed Match Challenge box.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Rock and Sock Connection, was the other one that I thought was like, woo, there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. So I'm looking forward to just any character with submission. It's such a good version of Poison.
I'm personally just very bad at paying attention to characters that are not physically in front of me. So I'm not great at keeping up with previews or looking them over. It's hard for me to read cards on a screen than it is to read them in my hand.
I mean,
so.
Okay, but just as favorite wrestlers even.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you were just going off of these are the characters I want to play, then all of them. Like,
can't wait to get all 17 figures and an empty package. Da, 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 da.
oh man.
I think I saw one other question, but I don't know what else was there. Last call for questions in the chat because it looks like this is going to be a light one today. Amber, anything you want to add about this?
I hope they don't take too long to work through it.
Yeah.
But take the time that they need.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to see it up tomorrow with kind of like a half-assed attempt at it, but also I don't want to wait till next year to get it. Like,
traditionally, they take 3 to 4 weeks to get this out.
I don't know. It's been too long.
I always find that time flies whenever this comes up.
Yeah.
Where it's like we sit there, we're like, I wonder what's gonna change. I wonder if anything's gonna change, and then we forget about it, and then by the time it says like, oh, look at that. Like, the conversation was over about it, and we were kind of hum-hawing. Most of us have a good idea of what might happen with it, and then it happens, and then we go, what? Because I gotta say, with the history of the watch list, there have been times where they went too far on the spectrum.
Yeah.
I looked to, like, the Iron Pharaoh, I think, was one of the biggest, like, oh my gosh, you went that far with it? What was another one? Who was nerfed into uselessness? Spiral definitely wasn't as good as she initially was, but the Bat Belt still kept making an appearance. That wasn't a big deal.
What was the Legion lizard guy?
Oh, to that guy, yeah. Telerak. That guy was nerfed into oblivion, like right into uselessness, because his ability was so broken that
to even attempt
Tellus.
To even attempt to change it was
friendly characters with the Legion superheroes within 4 squares can draw a line of fire and count range in squares from the square of any one friendly character within 4 squares of Tellus.
Yeah, and then he got errated to be within 4 squares, can draw a line of fire and count range from a square of any one of friendly characters within. Was that the errata?
That is the errata.
Okay.
I don't remember what he did before. I need the card in front of me. I just remember you were able to do stupid things like TK somebody like across the board and then get somebody else within a range of them. And then
there was also one of the Legion of Superheroes was a giant, and oh no, you know what I think is that it wasn't keyworded before. I think it was just friendly characters.
Oh, that's right. It was friendly characters can draw a line of fire as opposed to friendly characters with the Legion of Superheroes keyword.
Because that's what brought him completely down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a couple of giants at the time where you could just giant reach through him and giant reach quake through him, and yeah, it was
so scary. I mean, that was the year I like to call line of fire didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because, like, you had Iron Pharaoh.
This was also the watch list where, like, half of Legion of Superheroes ended up on the watch list.
Well, there was Tellus, there was
Bizarro.
Oh, yeah. Tellus, Bizarro. What a busted set this was. Like,
there was a bunch of, like, small erratas on characters, too.
Mm-hmm. I do remember I actually remember that year, the year of Legion of Superheroes. We did a like best and worst of the year, and I turned around and said Legion of Superheroes was the worst set because none of the cards mattered anymore.
Yeah.
Because all the cards got errated right into oblivion.
Yeah, even outside of the watch list, so many cards, like so many characters were just errated on their own. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Oh man, do I ever!
But gosh, I love that set.
I liked it until the erratas.
Yeah.
But then, what else got really obliterated?
Wasn't Copycat one of them?
Copycat wasn't obliterated. She was still fine. I want to say it was. Shoot, there was. I think Iron Pharaoh was like the biggest obliteration of a character in the watch list. I would need a history of the watch list to be brutally honest to figure it out because it's been so long since we've had one of these.
Also, the watch list started in like what 2015.
Yeah, I want to say that it was a weird thing because people thought the watch list is going to help with the entities and it just made them fine.
Yeah, like I don't even
It just took away the deity theme team. Or no, sorry, it took away the entity theme team.
Yeah, they didn't no longer gave keywords, right?
Yeah.
Like.
Oh, I'm babbling my way through like, where are all the erratas from watch lists that just obliterated characters? I'm like, it's happened a few times, and I'm really having a hard time absolutely remembering it. So
watch list should have.
No, I don't think it does.
Oh, is it just whatever's active, not what they've done in the past?
They haven't even updated with the new one. Actually, I think it's in that PDF now. I think about it.
Oh, maybe.
Nope, modern errata PDF.
So that's not gonna give us a history of the watch list.
Was it rules? And I don't know.
There may not actually be a curated history of the watch list.
That would be a shame to not. Now that I think about it, the Heroes for Hire ATA was changed into obliteration. That's the rulebook changelog. I don't know why I'm looking at that. Alright, I'm done. I figured it out that I don't. TMNT Modern New Rules. Uncarded keyword list. Marvel team abilities. List of legal resources. I got nothing.
Yeah.
I really got nothing. Anyway. I give up.
It's all good.
Because the first one had Brother Voodoo, the Bat Belt, Spiral, I think was the first one, and the cop car. That was an obliteration.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Cop car no longer does penetrating damage.
The cop car should never have been able to do penetrating damage.
What, you don't like those kryptonite engines they run in Gotham City? Then the second ever watch list, it had Proxima Midnight on it, which was the untouched character in that one. Mm-hmm. But there was I remember Rock Limited was going on at the time, and there was a couple figures that were just dominating that whole thing. Because Proxima Midnight was like, oh my god, a standout. But there's other, like, everything. That was the Iron Pharaoh one. Iron Pharaoh got annihilated on that one. Yeah, so anyway, I think we're done yammering.
Yeah, it's my bedtime.
It is your bedtime. So Amber's got to go to bed. You guys have yourselves a wonderful evening. Thank you guys for watching. That's our thoughts on the watch list. As well as a couple other ramblings towards the end there. I apologize for that. Really wanted to find a history of the watch list to go. We do that all the time. Get you and me on the channel, and then I try to do something, and you forget how to talk to people, or yourself on the camera.
Yeah, that's.
Love you. What is that?
I don't know. What is that?
It was a high five. In fact, it's supposed to be a no-look high five. That was almost my face. I feel like I actually blocked a slap by accident there. All right. With that note, I want to thank MajesticCCG.com. Check out the Apex Insiders, $3 a month. Gets you brain dumps from some of the greatest game guys in the game's history. They're so fantastic. And I want to thank everybody who's watching live, everybody who's watching in the archives. Thanks to our patrons over at patreon.com/MaryClicks. And I want to thank you guys and say, I would say practice makes your team better, but this isn't the Metal Lab. So what do we say on the Married Lab?
We don't have a slogan.
We don't have a slogan? So if we're going to leave awkwardly and just kind of go to the title screen, and we're going to turn on the music like this, and we're just